So now I've told you what doesn't work. So what does work, right? So that's the question. So we really have to go back first and look at society and how society really functions. There's a myth that's purported by the capitalist belief that society is just a group of people. But really, when you actually look at and carefully analyze society, society is not just people. It's the common glue that binds us together. That's really what forms society, right? When the person is swimming in the media, when he goes to his goes to work, he listens to music. All these things are what kind of inform him or her of their opinion, right? It's that common kind of medium that we swim in as human beings. And when you study all the different people who may change, they may change in that medium. I'm going to go through many different examples, and I'll finish off with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to show how he made change and how he operated in that medium. So what the activists do is that they address the common emotions, common thoughts of society, make their case to the public masses. Then that is what influences the institutions, and that is what leads to change in society. So I first want to begin with a question. Why do we only work 40 hours a week? And the reason why that's an important question is because when you look at our brothers and sisters in Bangladesh or the people in China, they don't work 40 hours a week. Yeah, like 80 hours a week probably, right? It's the same companies, right? Whether it's Apple employing workers in China to make iPhones for $300 a month, or it's Apple employing you here, or like employing someone here to work at the Apple store. Why in Canada are they in America as well? Why are they limited to 40 hours a week? But in China they can work them 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week, and there's no consequences. Because this has to do with the way corporations make money. The more you pay wages, the less profit you make as a shareholder, right? So it's simple math. Why would they give it up? And so the answer lies in the labor movement. The labor movement, beginning of the labor movement was around the 1877. So the Civil War happened in around 1865, it finished, and then big time capitalism and industrialism came to America around the 1877. So what we saw happening in the Muslim world, like the Arab Spring, actually happened in America. People just rebelled. They were sick of this inhumane conditions and they rebelled. And then after a while, so there was a lot of different people that emerged from that kind of uprising. So there was people who were anarchists, had different philosophies of government. There were communists. There were also just regular labor people who just wanted a fair share of the pie. They didn't disagree with capitalism in its in its belief, but they wanted just a fair share of the pie. So what they decided to do is like, hey, what we can unite around is the 8-hour workday. So let's unite around that and make our case that this is something that we do. And so they would have strikes, they would have public demonstrations. They'd bring the women and children, and the police got heavy-handed, as you see, like in Palestine they do. And they beat and clubbed the women and children, and these things would build sympathy. It wasn't the intention of the movement to have their wives and children beaten, but just because the corporations were so aggressive. And that won public opinion on their favor, and so then those companies were forced to concede to labor's demands. So what you see they didn't do is go to the ballot box. Right? The labor movement the 40-hour work week did not come through the ballot box. It came through these types of actions. Then we also have the African American civil rights movement in the US. They too also, actually they didn't have the right to vote. So it's a really interesting case as to how they got their rights, how they got, how they desegregated America. So what that involved is civil disobedience. Civil disobedience was that they would disobey those racist laws on purpose, with the purpose of creating a controversy, which would eventually end up in courts, to stir the common emotions, common thoughts of the society, to change the segregated America into having a unified society where blacks would not be treated as second-class citizens. So that took organization again. That took like the people to sit on the bus. So black women specifically, Rosa Parks is the most famous example of that, but there were many black women who would sit on the white area of the bus just so they would get arrested, and then they would have a lawyer who would work pro bono for free, because if you ever worked with a lawyer, they charge you an arm and a leg. They would work for free, and they would bring these cases to the court. And then they'd have also demonstrations. They'd also organize also boycotts. There was a famous Montgomery bus boycott where these companies that implemented racist laws, such as segregation, they went after them. Now, you and me, we have options. We can take the car to work, or we can take the GO train to work, right? I take the GO train to work because I hate driving in Toronto traffic. But do you think African Americans had that choice? Being poor? They didn't, right? So they had to organize rides to work. How are they going to get to work? How are they going to provide for a living? So they had to have an organized system where they have taxis and they have people with cars. They'd organize a way to get to work. So again, the movement had to be very organized and purposeful. It wasn't just random stuff, right? And again, none of these people went to the ballot box, right? They organized this through addressing the common emotions, common thoughts, and making their case that, us as human beings, like, how can you discriminate on basis of the color of your skin? This is anti-human. So when I was preparing this presentation, I was doing research, and I never thought of including this group in my presentation. Because I'd known, we all know about Malcolm X and the rights and the situation of the blacks, and I had, previously I had studied the situation of the, labor movement and things like that, because you see a lot of parallels between how they went after the labor movement, how they're coming after us as Muslims. The group that also had to work through this medium in the North American, in the sort of the current context, is the 1%. So the 1% also, if they want to make change, they had to work through the public opinion. They had to change the public opinion first. So let me walk you through how this actually works. So after World War II, the dominant form of economics in Britain, and I'll focus on Britain for this example, but generally in the Western world, was Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics is the philosophy of tax and spend. The idea is that capitalism has boom and bust. So when there's a boom, you tax like crazy so that you can inject in the economy when there's a bust. So this was the one philosophy. The other philosophy is espoused by Friedrich von Hayek, which is the current where the current world has shifted, dog-eat-dog capitalism, like where there's no social safety net, no health care, nothing, every man, woman for themselves. Let the devil take the hindmost is what they say, right? So that's Friedrich von Hayek's kind of idea. So these were the two economic philosophies that were there. Keynesian was dominant, right? Like the idea of, healthcare, social welfare, these people just fought a war, let's provide them a country that's worth living in. So Hayek, who had this philosophy, attracted, obviously, the rich, right? So Anthony Fisher was such a person. He made a lot of money from factory farming chicken. Like those horror movies you see with Food Inc. and stuff like that, where the chicken are all cooped up. Anthony Fisher was the one who made a lot of money off that, bringing that to England. So he thought, I've read Hayek, I want to fight socialism, so how do I do that? So he went to Hayek, and he had a conversation with him, and he's like, listen, I'm going to get into politics, and I'm going to fight these socialist ideas. And what did Hayek tell him? He said, don't waste your time going to fighting politics with the socialists. Don't waste your time going into politics. Instead, get involved in the battleground of ideas. What we need to do is we need to fund think tanks that will make research, that will influence universities, influence schools, influence the media, so both the radio media and also the print media. Anthony Fisher joined the Mount Pelerin Society in 1954, which was this institution designed to do that. And then 25 years later, so the 1% have sabr, they had patience to work through the medium. Margaret Thatcher got elected in England, and she's the one embodiment of these ideas of Hayek's philosophy, and basically destroyed the unions. They destroyed the social fabric in England, which they're still reeling from. And you see this kind of thing, has been spread to Canada as well. This is in Canada, it's been done through the Fraser Institute and other right-wing think tanks. So of course though, the most important example for us is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I want to begin first by making it clear, though despite our situation here in Canada, specifically here in Canada, our situation is not as bad as our brothers and sisters as the Sahaba faced in Makkah. And the story that illustrates that the best, or that for me really brings it home, is the story of Khabbab bin Arat. May Allah be pleased with him. Khabbab bin Arat was a slave, and he was one of the first 10 people to accept Islam. And during the time of Umar bin al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, during his khilafah, they were discussing. There was a group of them, and they were discussing about the torture of Makkah. So Khabbab bin Arat, instead of just talking about it, he lifted up his shirt to expose his back. On his back were these holes. Could you imagine that, like seeing holes on someone's back, like just indentations in them? And obviously the assembly, including Umar bin al-Khattab, was horrified at looking at such a thing. And so they wondered, how could that happen? Khabbab bin Arat, the way the mushrikeen of Quraysh used to torture him is they would put hot coals on his back until he could smell his own flesh burn. Just want to picture that for a second. Could you imagine lying there, being able to do nothing, just feeling the pain sear through your back, and all you can hear is your flesh burning? That was the situation, and may Allah be pleased with all the Sahabas. It's their sacrifice that we're Muslims today. It's those sacrifices that they did that if they hadn't taken those sacrifices, none of us would be Muslims today. And it's in this context that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was offered the crown to be a king of the society of the Quraysh. He loved his companions sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He hated them he didn't like it that they were being tortured. He could have stopped it by taking the crown, but he didn't. Right? Because that's not the way you make change in society. That's not the way to make a difference. What he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't even engage in the turf war that was going on in the society. The society had clashes between who was the better tribe. Was it Bani Makhzum? Was it Bani Umayyah? Banu Hisham? Banu Hisham gave him jawar. They gave him protection. But he didn't go and say, oh, Banu Hisham is better than this other parties. He didn't go to Dar al-Nadwa and tell people that. He refused to get involved in the system. Instead, he challenged the Quraysh and their ideas and their beliefs. He would challenge them about their idolatry. He would challenge them about their economic practices of riba and interest. He would challenge them about burly of the female. Right? This was something that the tribe did to become a stronger tribe. A woman is a waste of resources. Have a son instead. He fought them on that, even though that was something that was a core part of their beliefs. And they tortured his Sahabas. They tortured him. They bribed him. They offered women. They offered money. They offered the crown. But he refused all that, and he stood firm on La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And you may say, and this is a fair question, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how did he succeed in Makkah? He had to flee to Medina sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? He didn't get support in Makkah. He had to get out of there. And we all know the story of migration, how he had to plan, he had to, go south, because that way the Quraysh would, he knew the Quraysh were looking at him. They were looking at him in front of the cave. The fruits of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's work were not seen during his lifetime, but after his death. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he died and Abu Bakr became the Khalifa, all of the tribes except a few of them, including Taif, Mecca and Medina, they're the few towns that stayed with Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with them. Now, if Quraysh wanted to recapture the political power from the Jazir al-Arab, the Arabian Peninsula, now is the time to do it. All the Arabs are rebelling. Now is the time to seize the power. As you know, when Abu Bakr was discussing, and the Sahabas were discussing in Banu Thaqifa about who should be the Khalifa, Abu Bakr said, may Allah be pleased with all the Sahabas, that the Arabs will follow Quraysh. They won't follow you, like the Ansar. They won't follow the tribes of Medina. That was his thing. So if Quraysh rebelled and they rebelled at the point, they would easily capture the political power. They would regain the place they lost because the Muslims had conquered them. But that's where you saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's work come into fruition. That those 13 long years he spent in Mecca, giving da'wah, challenging the Quraysh in their beliefs, building a public opinion for Islam, suddenly that came to the forefront. That's where the Quraysh became amongst the core support for the Islamic State, for Abu Bakr. And it's probably best summarized by Ikrimah Abi Jahl, who later on accepted Islam, about how he felt about his actions before and after. He said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he gave him the shahada and pledge, he said that I'm going to fight twice as hard as I try to fight you. And he died shaheed in Yarmouk when I accepted shahada. So this is the effort, and this is the work that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he did. He worked through the public opinion challenge to the Quraysh, because when in the time of his time when he used to recite the ayat, they knew it was from Allah because of the miracle of the Quran and the way the miracle works. So when he would put it forth, his challenge of those practices by reciting the ayat of the Quran, the Quraysh understood that this is true, and they were afraid of the recitation of the Quran, and they were afraid of these ideas because they knew that this would move the masses, and as you can see, it eventually did. So before I go into the action plan, I just want to give two quick things to drive it home that when groups like the African Americans and the labor movement, when they turn to the ballot box, they get burned by the ballot box. So Barack Obama, and this is one statistic from an article in the Atlantic Monthly. So it's there's a lot of hate against Obama again because of the racism in the States. But this is from the Atlantic Monthly, so it's from a reputable source. And what it says is, and inshallah we'll have a discussion on the situation of the African Americans in one of the future circles on this, inshallah. 1 in 15 African Americans is in jail, in contrast to 1 in 106 white people. So let me say that again. 1 in 115, 1 out of 15 people of blacks are in jail, compared to 1 in 106. So how is Obama, who's black, unable to change their situation, right? So when the blacks thought that he would get into office, he would change their situation, it hasn't changed. And this is just one statistic amongst many statistics. When labor, the Democratic Party in the US is labor's party. They've always turned to the Democratic Party to get their rights. What the Democratic Party do in 1992 was completely betray them. They signed NAFTA. And NAFTA, what it did, it was destroy the ability of labor to organize. As I showed you before, the way labor is able to get back at the corporations is to strike. If they're making stuff, you strike, they stop making money. So it becomes, you're challenging the companies. You go in, and the unions then become a base to challenge society, right? Because the unions are that kind of coalescing point for other people who are not part of the union, right? So what happened was, once NAFTA was signed, and this was illegal, but this shows you who really runs the show again, is what the corporations would do is that they would hear rumors of a union being formed. So what they would then do is they would put up signs saying, we're moving to Mexico. Who wants to come with us? And so then obviously everyone started freaking out, right? They'd get scared, and then they would stop doing that, and that's how they defeated the unionization movement and the labor movement of America. It was NAFTA and the globalization in general that destroyed it, but who brought it in? The people that voted for the labor movement voted in the Democrats, and then the Democrats came and destroyed them, because the Democrats, just like the Republicans, are owned by the 1%. They say Republicrat in the US because they're just really one party, two faces of the same coin.